Hi, and welcome to the Conscious Marketer podcast. I'm Richard and joined by Kylie. Hi, Kylie.
There.
And we're super excited today to have Nikki Nash on. She is the founder of Market You're a Genius, has a podcast and a book of the same name. And she basically helps people become the go-to experts in their field. And she kind of started out in the corporate world, but left that for more of the entrepreneurial world. And she's a global mentor now and helps others turn their zone of genius into sources of impact and income. Hi, Nikki. Welcome today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a super pleasure. We always get excited to talk to other marketers and healers and therapists and other people, but marketers especially, because we're all trying to help people get their work into the world in authentic ways. Maybe you could share a little bit about your own story and how you kind of pivoted or started onto the marketing path, if it began there, and then where it led from there.
Yeah. So I, throughout my life, thought I was going to be either an actress or a journalist by the time I got to college. And my plan was to work in publishing and then go back to school and become a journalist, write books, that sort of thing. And when I graduated college, I did this program, the summer program at NYU on the book editing side, as well as the book and magazine editing, and then the business side. And I just loved all the marketing people and said, they seem cool. And next thing you know, I have a marketing job at InStyle magazine. And I just stayed in marketing and kind of went from publishing to advertising and then into corporate doing content marketing for Fortune 100 companies. And I think, honestly, I was working at a job and I loved it. Like, loved actually might be a strong word. I liked it. And I really liked my coworkers. But my aunt was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And then I found out that it was genetic and my mom had the gene. And then, so forth. I had to get tested. My sister had to get tested. And in between finding out my results and just waiting, I just had this realization that I didn't want to spend my life in a cubicle. And I decided I was going to quit my job. And so for anybody who's like, what the heck happened? My sister and I tested negative, so we don't have the gene. But I was living on the West Coast. My whole family was on the East Coast. And I decided to quit my job. And I said, I'll start a business being a marketing consultant or something along those lines. And some people may resonate with this part. The next thing that happened is I felt great for about a week and then I freaked out. And then I started looking for jobs and convinced myself that if I worked at a tech startup or some sort of startup, I would learn how to start a business and then I'd be okay. And so I did take a head of marketing job at a tech startup for about a year and a half before I realized that I was just delaying the inevitable and that nobody knows what they're doing really when they're starting a business. I mean, they know something, but they don't know everything. And so I decided ultimately to go out on my own back in 2016.
That's great. And that was a good time to come out because the digital world had kind of fully expanded. And I think the corporate world in particular was quite slow to catch on to the digital thing. So there was a lot of opportunities, I'm sure, back then. What was some of the key learnings that when you first started your business that you were like, oh, I wish I had a mentor that had told me this or that? What are a few of the things that you were like, I should have known that, or somebody should have I should have got the memo, is sometimes how I say it.
Yeah, I think the first memo I would have liked to have is to focus on long-term strategy and goal versus short-term wins and results. And I was so focused on, oh, I need to make this much money this month, or I want to have this revenue goal just because it seems like everybody else is doing well. And I was so focused on kind of hustling and trying to make money today that I didn't think about, is this the business that I really want to be in for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, let alone what is it going to look like in the next 3 to 5 years? And what do I really truly want as a business owner? And so at the beginning, I ultimately created a underpaid job for myself when I really look at how many hours I was working, even though I was bringing in good money. And I kind of wish I took a step back and really looked at what I was building, what I actually wanted to be doing, and started there before I just dove in and started taking clients and trying to make money and hustling, all to essentially change my mind multiple times. I could have saved some time if I had spent more time thinking before I started doing.
That's such a great lesson, because I think on the one side, I think you just have to take massive action, and focusing on sales is probably a good thing. And then on the other side, the business model you choose sometimes can dictate a lot of things. And a lot of people choose the wrong business model right out of the gate, and then they have to kind of like they create something maybe that isn't the most efficient or the thing that they would love to do every day.
Yeah. And I ultimately just was taking clients left and right. And then I had a hard time telling people what I did because I just said yes to everything. And I didn't have any sort of guidelines and parameters in terms of what I did and didn't want to be doing. So then I was overworking, doing done for you services and just consulting and strategy work. I was all over the place and was very busy and not as happy and had no life for longer than I would have liked to.
Yeah. So you talk a little bit about helping people become the go-to person in their industry. And this is something that a lot of people talk about. I'm guessing you have a unique method to help them get there. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of our audience, they're trying to stand out, and there's a lot of people who do what they do and they talk about their process, and people don't necessarily care about the process. There's other things they care about. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And it actually I started developing my method in corporate and I didn't even realize it at the time. But I remember my boss when I was working at Intel, and my boss said to me, you're doing great work, but in order to really move up, more people need to know who you are, because the conversation around promotion usually happens in closed doors where a bunch of people are vying for their candidate to get a promotion. And so the more people you have that speak highly of you, the better it'll be for you. So he suggested that I do something to get people to know who I was. And so I started these internal lunch and learns called Getting Social with Nikki. And I would teach social media to people who had to use social media for their jobs, but didn't know what the heck it was or how to use it. And I would just have a little bit of training and then Q&A and open conversations. And what I realized, and this goes to the point of how do you become the go-to expert in your area, is I realized there's a number of ways to start becoming the go-to expert in your area. But the thing that always is a great place to start is where you have talents. So I had a talent for teaching and making things that were seemingly complicated not so complicated. So I leaned into that. Some people do really well speaking. Some people do really well writing. Some people do really well, with long form content or short form content. But it's first figure out what is the best way for you to contribute to your industry, and have people start going, oh, have you listened to, so-and-so's podcast, or their seen them speak on stage, or read their blog post. You don't have to do everything, especially at first, but choose the medium in which you shine the most and start there and just start contributing your point of view, contributing your insight and value first. So that's kind of step number one. And I call this a CAR method. It's like an acronym, but that would be the C would be contribute, and just contribute content and value and your opinions in a medium that works well for you. And then to continue with the acronym, because I love acronyms and frameworks I don't know why, but I've gotten really into them over the last decade. But the A is association. And so it's really what I've discovered is when you're associated with other people either in your industry or field, or that are also considered reputable or, trustworthy, that adds to your credibility as well. And so that association could come from interviewing people on a podcast or a YouTube channel, or it could be speaking with someone on stage, or it's part of the reason why you may see a lot of people like having pictures of them with somebody who's celebrity. Like, I don't necessarily do that approach, but it's all part of association, and you can start almost borrowing somebody else's trust and credibility by being seen in their circles, or being seen on the same stages or shows or things like that. And then I'm a really big fan of the two R's, because it's not car spelled correctly. It's CARR. And the first R is research. And so if you are in an industry, really learn, like, be the go-to in the industry, know what's going on, know what people are speaking about, and really research and share research that you know. For example, I'm going to make up statistics for a point, but if you're in the health industry and you know that, 56% of women aged 18 to 35 are considered obese, and the causing problem is, not eating enough vegetables, completely making this up, please don't quote me on this, then you can speak to that and then maybe share your point of view on how to get more vegetables in a diet, right? So you're backing things that you say up with research that's out in the world. And then my last R, which is my personal favorite, is results. When you help someone get results and your clients, things along those lines, share their wins, share their results, because then people will start knowing, wow, you really are somebody who's go-to in the industry. And I may be like, I want that result. So why not come speak to you, because you not only contribute content of value and are associated with great people and have some research that you share, or maybe you've done your own research on fields, but you actually help people get results. And so I think results is probably one of the strongest ways in which you can position yourself as an expert. But, contribute is how I got started. And I just started doing Facebook Lives back in the day, contributing my thoughts on things.
Yeah, I love that. So if I'm just starting out or newer in my business and I want to break into this category of associations, what are some of the first steps I can take if I'm not associated with leaders in my field?
Yeah, I think the first thing you can do is just start pitching yourself to be a guest on a podcast. Or the easiest way is to start your own podcast and ask other people to be a guest. That's honestly how I accidentally started. I didn't start a podcast to have people on my show when I initially started it, but after I met people at different conferences and just offered them to be a guest, it just kind of spun off from there. And so honestly, that was the easiest for me. And it doesn't need to actually be a podcast. It could be, hey, can we do a Instagram Live or a Facebook Live together? Or, hey, can we record a video that I'll post on YouTube? It doesn't need to be something that requires a medium that isn't your strength or too much time. It's literally, again, lean into your strengths. If you're a great writer, invite someone to be interviewed and you'll write a blog post about them. And so you can start associating yourself with folks that way.
That's a great acronym. And I love how it's nice and simple, and there's not more than 4, so we can kind of remember all of them too.
Yeah.
I think that, there is so much information and so many people vying for attention out there. I think one of the things that we see is that just the people who are doing it consistently, especially, are the people who kind of break through. I kind of have a fascination for how people create breakout strategies, like, because it's kind of like one day you're plodding along and then all of a sudden you see somebody and they're everywhere and you're like, how did that happen? I didn't know about that person like a month ago or 2 weeks ago. And then we've had clients that have the same thing. I'm kind of curious if you have any perspectives on like those quantum leaps or those paradigm shifts. And sometimes I think, okay, that was built on like 5 or 10 years and people see it as an overnight success, but it wasn't. But I'm kind of interested in your perspective.
Yeah, I love this question because it brings in so many different beliefs that I have. I think from a marketing perspective, sometimes there is, 5-10 years of work before someone sees the overnight success. But I think a big contributor to those types of overnight successes, and not everybody has all of these, but I think they usually have one. It could be relationship capital, where they just started building relationships with great people who were like, hey, we're going to promote you or spotlight you. Or maybe there's a request that says, hey, I'm launching something. Can we, launch, or can you help me promote it? And then suddenly you see the person everywhere on everybody's podcasts and stages and things like that. I think there's also a piece of it that is a bit more belief based in quantum in that standpoint, where and this actually happened to me in terms of how I got a book deal with Hay House, because people are like, how did that happen? And I'm like, this was complete belief work and some quantum magic. But I think some people are able to be really clear on where they want to go or what they'd like to happen. and are maybe not as attached to it happening in a certain time frame, but they hold that belief that like, hey, I'm going to be the go-to person in this industry, or I'm going to be seen as the next hottest thing. And I think that when you believe it and you can align your energy to just be in that space of, it's inevitable, it's going to happen, and you just have that trust. I do believe there is a kind of belief system part to it. And then honestly, some people get really lucky by putting out some cool piece of content that folks really want to share. So that's probably a third piece to it. And the final thing is some people really do have a targeted strategic approach where they're like crystal clear on what they want to be known for. I think that's the key. If you want to be a success that kind of seems overnight, speak about the same darn thing. Like it becomes really hard when you speak about 10 different things, but try to choose a lane, speak about it, and put almost all of your energy towards being seen in that way. And I've worked with folks on building specific strategies, oftentimes when they're doing a book launch or something, or launching something, where they are like, we will be seen everywhere speaking about this one thing, and we're going to get momentum, and that momentum creates more opportunities. And there can be a strategy behind it, but some folks really do just, believe it's going to happen and then get lucky and something magical shows up in their life. And next thing you know, they're everywhere.
I love that. You have some great accomplishments. You have a podcast, you have a book, you're doing really well in your business. I'm curious because a lot of our clientele are afraid of failure. That's a big fear of theirs. Do you have any great failure stories for us on the road to everything you've accomplished?
I'm like, I fail all the time. I think what people don't see when they see successes is how many quote unquote failures you may have. And some are literal. My first launch for a group program had 0 people signed up, right? And I had all of these friends that I had made bonus gifts for people who purchased. And I was like, cool, nobody purchased. And that was I felt embarrassed, only to find out after speaking to some people that a lot of folks have failed launches, especially in the beginning, and sometimes after they've been launching for a long period of time. So I've failed at launches. Even in my book deal story, I always tell people to just try to believe more often than you don't, because I really believed that Hay House was going to pick up my book. And then I went through months of going back and forth with like, I'm not good enough. Why would they choose me? What the heck do I have to say? Then the next day thinking I'm like, what I have to say is so important and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then going back to, no, it's not, it's terrible. Nobody wants to hear this. And I think it's really just believing more often than you don't. And honestly, just trying to believe just enough to take action, because I do believe, I think part of the reason why I've failed so much and so often is because I'm constantly taking action. But I do believe that when you're constantly taking action, if you're clear on where you're going, at least you're taking action in the right direction. When I first started my business, I had no direction. So I was just taking action left and right. And it's like the saying, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. I was doing massive zigzagging. And so it just took me a while to figure out where I was going. But I will say, I'm sure there are a lot of failures. I mean, I've overdrawn bank accounts. Like, I'm just trying to think. I'm like, I've probably done all of the things. But had clients that canceled, and you're just kind of like, what did I do? And even if they're literally just like, no, I just don't have money, in your mind, you still think like, well, I did something. Maybe I shouldn't have brought them on. It's a whole mindset game. It's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, it's super, I think it's super important for people to hear, especially from those that have kind of made it and are successful, just to keep taking action. I really love what you said there, that believe in yourself enough, just enough to take the next action, because that's a really powerful statement, because it's through the action that the belief is created. And so it reinforces that you can do it. And then you can start to develop the conviction, and then you just start creating kind of that entrepreneurial momentum that can become unstoppable,
Absolutely. And it doesn't always look pretty. I like to tell people when I think my book ended up having something like 26 endorsements in it, but this is what it looked like me asking for an endorsement. I made a list of people to ask, and then I avoided that list for months. Then it got to a point where I'm like, you have to ask people, otherwise there's not going to be any endorsements. And then and some of these people I don't know, like I emailed Barbara Corcoran's assistant, who I think it was her address. I don't even know. I just kind of Googled. So I'm like asking people that I knew and people that I had no idea that I exist on the planet. And I would send an email and then hit send, and then I would slam my computer shut and run out of the room like that did something. But I was just like, I did it. And I would run away. And then I would come back and do that like a few more times. And then I would get a yes, and I'd feel good. And then I'd get I'm sorry, I can't, I have too many things going on. And then I'd take it personally and be really upset. And then I'd, get another yes, and I'd be okay. Or somebody would ignore me and I'd be a little bit of a mess. And so it doesn't have to look beautiful, but just if you can get yourself to take action, and you can do that over and over and over again, you will see success. Just remember, it doesn't need to look pretty. I think for a while I thought I was just supposed to be really confident and act like I made it, and then I'd be able to take action. And that's not at all the case. It's like you take action and it may look a little messy, but at least you took it.
Yeah, maybe, there's a phrase, we sometimes use the phrase done is better than perfect. I got that from one of the leading dog trainers in the world, Susan Garrett. It's not my own, but maybe we could create one that's like taking actions better than pretty, or we could find one that like something like that. Like it doesn't have to be pretty.
Yeah.
maybe that's the phrase. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just get it done.
Exactly.
Maybe this has been a wonderful talk. I feel inspired to go out and try things that I might fail at again now that I'm listening to you. Where are you going with your business? What's your vision for helping the world and making it a better place and serving people? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah. So I actually just at the beginning of this year started a new business with one of our mutual friends, but one of my friends. And we literally are set out to help business owners create generational wealth through their business. And so I come at it from a marketing perspective, and how do I help people consistently bring on more dream clients? And my business partner is an expert more in like curriculum and operations and things along those lines. And so how do you develop a program that keeps your clients coming back and helps them get results? And we're really a stand for helping people realize it's not just about making money in the short term. It's about really looking at how do you create a business that you love, but also can afford you opportunities to create wealth and invest in other opportunities and things. And so we bring on a number of kind of experts and things along those lines to help our clients out. But that's been where the business is going. And so it's a lot of how do I help more people grow better businesses and ultimately create longevity in their wealth that lives beyond them, and a legacy of that.
I love that. You don't hear a lot of people talking about that in our industry. So I love that you're doing that. If you were to leave our audience with just any last words of advice that we haven't covered today, what would it be?
It would be that there is no one path to anything. And so if you have a goal in your business, whether it's, to get more clients or to get a book deal or to hire a team member or whatever it is, I would say realize that there's not one path. And if I were to add to that, I would say always trust your gut and intuition. So trust yourself, because my path and the things that I've done, when I share that with other people, they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, yes, but that's what felt good to me. And so that's why I went that way. And so even when I teach marketing, I'm like, you don't have to do exactly what I did. In fact, if you do exactly what I did, it probably wouldn't work for you. So let's kind of follow a general pathway, but it's really more trust yourself. And keep it simple would be my third thing. I know I'm giving a lot, but keep it simple. We have a tendency to overcomplicate things in business. Keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us so much here, Nikki, today. And if people want to find out more about you, can you share a little bit about your website and what you have going on?
Yeah. So my website is nikkinash.co. And it's my home base. It's where I put out a lot of content and link to all my content, and then also share a little bit about what I'm doing with my business partner and things along those lines. So that's the best place to go. And if you're on social media and different platforms, I'm pretty much everywhere, usually as Nikki Nash Official. So you can send me a DM. I always respond. So
I love it. I kind of like putting the official after your last name. It sounds official,
yeah, right.
So it's kind of like somebody else is trying to take your name, but this is the official one. It like gives you like just that little added credibility. So
there is another Nikki Nash, and she's an artist. So
okay.
I am not the artist Nikki Nash, but she also has a book out, and I think it's a fiction book. And so I've had people go before my book came out say, "I just ordered your book," and I'm like, "I don't have a book. That's not mine." And so yeah,
well, I want to hold space for you, because you started by saying that you wanted to be a movie star or on TV, and I could still see that happening. So I'm just throwing that out there, that it could come full circle. So
I do believe it will all come full circle. So I look forward to that day.
Okay, thanks for joining us today, Nikki, and thanks to all the listeners for listening to the Conscious Marketer podcast. And you can find this over at consciousmarketer.com. And if you go to /podcast, you can find this podcast. You can find the show notes. And we don't run ads here. So all we ask is you go on iTunes, whatever platform you're on, and leave a review. And that helps us kind of spread the news. Thanks, Nikki, again for sharing your wisdom and for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kylie, as well. See everybody next time. Bye for now.